none tukagira computer imwe iri hariya ko dufite no
ntabwo nyazuzazima bisha abasaza n'abasore bica abakecuru n'inkumi n'ababyeyi bakuriwe naho wa mwana ubasekera ntibatinye kumuniga ntabwo nyazuzazima ntugacike n'intege turagucigatiye ntabwo nyazuzazima mwaribeshyaga bicanyi ngo tuzazimagirana hashibutse amashami nimuzamara ubwoko hose Imana yaburemye ntabwo nyazuzazima ntugacike n'intege turagucigatiye ntabwo nyazuzazima babyeyi bacu twabuze rwa rukundo rw'umurage rwaduteye imbaraga tuzakora aho bwabaga mu kigwi cyanyu tuzabaho ntabwo nyazuzazima ntugacike n'intege turagucigatiye ntabwo nyazuzazima tuzi ko mudusabira aho mwicaye ijabiro byanze bikunze tuzabaho ababambuye ubuzima bazakorwe n'isoni nyanza ntabwo uzazima ugacike n'intege turagucigatiye ntabwo nyazuzazima uhumura nyanza ntuzazima ntugacike n'intege turagucigatiye ntabwo nyazuzazima
ntitwigeze turirira abacu ntitwanategereje gukira ibikomere ahubwo twahisemo gutanga imbabazi kugeza ubwo n'abatazishaka tuzibaha ahubwo twahisemo kubaka u Rwanda uwarusenya yaba twishe kenshi cyane twararokotse ariko twarokokanye ibikomere imbere n'inyuma wose twarashize abandi bana baravutse havuzwe impundu ariko twe twakirijwe induru n'amafirimbi nta gahenge twigeze tubonana mba twaratotejwe turicwa cyane bakabanja babisha babatemagura, bamwe batwikwa abandi bajugunywa mu nzuzi. Amakuru yabo mperukana yo ngayo gusa, abakabaye bamayandi ntibabishaka. Twabuze benshi mu miryango yacu, ntitwabapfunya, ntitwarira, ntitwabashyingura. Amarira yacu yatembye agwa mu nda turanuma. U Rwanda rwacu rwasumbye agahinda kacu, ntitwigeze turirira abacu, ntitwanategereje gukira ibikomere, ahubwo twahisemo gutanga imbabazi, kugeza ubwo n'abatazishaka tuzibaha. Ahubwo twahisemo kubaka u Rwanda, uwarusenya yaba twishe kenshi cyane. Wari kuzavamo umubyeyi ubereye u Rwanda, ababisha baguca umugongo bogakizwa. Kuva jenoside ihagaritswe nturigera ubyuka, uraterurwa ntiwiyambika, urakarabywa. Amaso yawe bayakuyemo siko wavutse, waciwe amaguru n'amaboko siko wavutse. Izo nkovu ubona ku mubiri siko wavutse. Kuba nta rushako nta rubyaro sukura ingumba, abawe ntibazizurwa ikirago baratsembwe. Gusa ibyo byose ntibikakubuze kuba imfura. Ahaguye umututsi hose mu Rwanda, nzajya mpajyana indabo kugeza nshaje. Nzashimira iteka abana b'u Rwanda baturokoye, sinzigera ntatira igihango ndarahiye. Ntitwigeze turirira abacu, ntitwanategereje gukira ibikomere, ahubwo twahisemo gutanga imbabazi, kugeza ubwo n'abatazishaka tuzibaha. Ahubwo twahisemo kubaka u Rwanda, uwarusenya yaba twishe kenshi cyane. Nubwo bakugize imfubyi buri kenyera ukomeze umwitero wawe ntiwandure. Nubwo utigeze umenya inkomoko yawe, kenyera ukomeze umwitero wawe ntiwandure. Nubwo wabuze benshi ukabura n'umushyingura, kenyera ukomeze umwitero wawe ntiwandure. Nubwo bagusigiye indwara zidakira, kenyera ukomeze umwitero wawe ntiwandure. Nubwo rubanda rukujomba amagambo asesereza, kenyera ukomeze umwitero wawe ntiwandure. Nubwo kenyera ukomeze umwitero wawe ntiwandure. jenoside yabereye mu Karange i Kayonza mu marembo y'u Rwanda. Mu Karange warutuwe n'abeza, kitazigurwa ku musozi mwiza w'Abega, bishwe mu minsi mike ku ya 12 i mu Karange barunyuguza.
Abasaza n'abasore bica abakecuru n'inkumi n'ababyeyi bakuriwe, naho bamwana ubasekera ntibatinye kumuniga. Ntabwo Nyanza uzazima, Nyanza ntuzazima, ntugacike n'intege, turagucigatiye, ntabwo Nyanza uzazima, Nyanza ntabwo uzazima. Mwaribeshye gabicanyi ngo tuzazimagirana, hashibutse amashami nimuzamara ubwoko hose Imana yaburemye. Ntabwo Nyanza uzazima, Nyanza ntuzazima, ntugacike n'intege, turagucigatiye, ntabwo Nyanza uzazima, Nyanza ntabwo uzazima. Babyeyi bacu twabuze rwa rukundo rw'umurage.
Good afternoon all. As we get ready to get started, I'll ask people to fill in the seats and get closer to each other. Abicaye inyuma mwakwegera imbere tukegerana kugira ngo abaza nyuma babone uko babasha kwicara. Thank you. All right, we're about to start our program of the day. Thank you all for joining us. It is a pleasure to be with you all. Your Eminence Cardinal Welton Gregory, Honorable Charles Ageruka, on behalf of the Embassy, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Rwandans and friends of Rwanda, we welcome you all. Thank you for joining us for this solemn afternoon of Kwibuka for the 31st time, when Rwandans and friends of Rwanda, when anybody in the world who does not stand for injustice and believes in the sacred value and meaning of life comes together to commemorate the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. This is something we do every year and something that is meaningful and carries the same weight year after year. Oftentimes people wonder, does it feel any different? Does it seem any different after 31 years? But the truth of the matter is, because we carry the memory of those we lost in our hearts, and because we carry the light of the hope for those who survived and for the new Rwanda to this day, the weight does not go away. And so as we come together, as we start our program this afternoon, I would like to request us to stand up and observe a moment of silence. We'll observe a moment of silence in honor of those we lost in the darkest 100 days of our history. And we'll hold in our minds and our hearts the survivors of the genocide and the country that we so love. Thank you. You may be seated. As we proceed with our program, I would like to kindly remind everybody in the room that in honor and in respect for the purpose that we're here this afternoon for, I would like to remind everybody to please make sure their phones are silenced, to make sure that we are not having conversations or talking loudly, because this is a moment of reflection and being quiet, primarily. And when it comes to Kwibuka, because of the weight of the moment, we do not clap, we do not make any noise. As much as the program will be going on, we will continue in that spirit of reflection. So at this moment, I would like to welcome Mr. Emmanuel Ndahimana, the president of Kwibuka USA, to step forward and lead us in the beginning of the program with his remarks, and I will ask him to welcome for us the survivor who will be sharing with us his testimony today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honorable Charles. counselor from the Embassy of Rwanda and the official delegate from the ambassador of the Republic of Rwanda here in Washington, D.C., Your Eminence, Cardinal Whitton Gregory, Dr. Duria, Vice Provost for Global Strategies and representative of the President of the Catholic University, Madame Kathy Rivanga, the President of Rwandan Community in the DMV, Reverend Dr. Jonathan Weaver, the President and the founder of the Pan-African Collective and a friend of Rwanda, distinguished speakers, Dr. Jean Kaisinger from Michigan State University, and Dr. Bojana Kuribari from Harvard University, faith community members, esteemed scholars, academics, and students, dear survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi, members of the Rwandan community here in DMV, friends of Rwanda, distinguished guests. I would like to thank each and everyone here for making the time today. It is with honor and gratitude that I welcome you all to this 31st commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. First, let us thank God for granting us this day. Without His grace, we won't be gathered here today. We welcome His presence, His strength, and peace during this event. I would like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to the Catholic University for your continued support and hosting this event. To Your Eminence Cardinal, thank you for joining us today. Your presence means so much, and we deeply appreciate you making time to join us today in your busy schedule. To the Embassy of Rwanda, thank you for your continued guidance and support. To our esteemed speakers, thank you for accepting our invitations and come to share the truth about genocide that happened in 1994 against the Tutsi in Rwanda. Your contribution is valued and sincerely appreciated. Allow me to take this opportunity also to acknowledge Howard University for its continued support to Rwanda, and in particular to the Rwandan community here in DMV. Dear Kwibuka DMV, I wanna send a special thanks for your tireless work. Equally, I wanna thank the Rwandan community for your unwavering support. My sincere appreciation goes to Monty, Dr. Monty, from University of Richmond, for joining us all the way from Richmond and honoring this occasion. I also want to recognize the organizing team that made this day possible. So allow me to briefly explain what Kwibuka means that I present today. Kwibuka is a Kinyarwanda word that means remember, Kinyarwanda is the national language of Rwanda. Also, Kwibuka means, it's a verb form that means to remember. So Ibuka that I represent today is a non-profit organization founded by survivors in 1995. It has branches all over the world, including USA. Our Ibuka in this region is a chapter of Ibuka USA. Its main purpose is to preserve the memory and honor the victims of the genocide. Also advocates and support survivors of the genocide. Honorable Councillor, Your Eminence, survivors, ladies and gentlemen, 31 years ago, Rwanda plunged into one of the most horrific genocide in history. In just 100 days, more than 1 million of innocent Tutsis were brutally slaughtered. The speed and the scale were unimaginable. In 1994, on April 21st, alone more than 250,000 of Tutsis were killed. Over 50,000 of them in one location of Murambi in the southern part of Rwanda. Again, this extent and speed was achieved by the support of Interahamwe, who were young and energetic, people trained just to kill, and were deployed all over the country. So these atrocities occurred in a plain sight. The world watched the genocide unfold on their television screen, yet no help came. The very institutions meant to protect the Tutsi turned against them. So let us picture the situation where the government, the police, the army, even neighbors are hunting down innocent Tutsi from cities, from town, from villages, from every corner of the country. Those Tutsi who were killed were not insects. They were not serpents, nor cockroaches, nor subhuman. They were humans like you and I. They were mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, children, cousins, uncles, aunties, our loved ones. They were our friends, they were our neighbors. So today we come together to remember them, honor them, and mourn them. We remember babies smashed against walls, toddlers and teenagers who were the hope and the future of Rwanda, but chopped into pieces. We remember those who paid to be killed in a quick way. We remember those who thrown into toilets alive. We remember those who were slaughtered and the parts of them and the parts of their body being eaten. We remember those who were raped, some in front of their children, tortured and killed. We remember those who were thrown in the rivers. We remember those who were forced to dig for themselves and buried alive. We remember. And we will continue to remember. They were killed not for anything they did, just because they were born Tutsi. So what else can we do? We can't bring them back, but we can keep their memories alive. I would like to bring to your attention that the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi did not begin suddenly. it was the result of decades of planning, dating back in 1959, with targeted killings in 1963, 1973, and 1990, and culminating in 1994. It was a systematic and deliberate campaign to exterminate Tutsis from every corner of the country, Rwanda. For instance, on the radio, there was propagating the hate against the Tutsi. They said one time, most of the time, that all Tutsi should be killed so that even children of Hutu will have to go to the museum to see what a Tutsi looked like. So today we still see the people around the world intentionally seek to confuse the world, to deny the genocide, and they continue to spread hatred. They do it in different ways. They deny it completely. They lessen it, that it was not too bad, that it was a conflict between Hutu and Tutsi. Others use wrong terms to mislead the world. But we are gathered here today to tell the truth, educate the world by facts. You are going to hear survivor testimonies. So it is our collective effort and responsibility as survivors, as Rwandans, as friends of Rwanda, and as a global citizen at large, to refuse and fight harder against any form of cover-up of the truth, any form of confusion, and the misleading term used to describe the 1994 against genocide in Rwanda. Allow me to clarify this to those who use these terms unintentionally. It is not a Rwandan genocide. It is not a genocide of Rwanda. It is not a Hutu-Tutsi conflict, nor a fight between Hutu and Tutsi. It is not a massacre. It is not a war. It is 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, as this terminology was recognized by United Nations General Assembly in its resolution 74/273. So using these terms, it is painful to survivors. We must honor them with truth, comfort them with compassion and accuracy, recognize also their resilience and contribution to the reconciliation. Honorable Councillor, Your Eminence, and fellow Rwandans, survivors are extremely concerned by the killings that are currently targeting survivors, one after the other. The number of cases increases as we approach the commemoration period. We can't thank enough for every government's effort toward the well-being of survivors. But we believe and request a long-term solution for this high concerning problem. To the survivors, I would like to remind you to be watchful, to be alert, and check one another regularly. So 31 years later, remains of the victims are still discovered throughout the country. Many perpetrators serving sentences still refuse to disclose where they threw the victims' bodies, denying families the opportunity for closure and dignified burials. Honorable Councillor, Your Eminence, survivors, ladies and gentlemen, some of the mastermind of the genocide continue to live freely abroad. We insist that all of us, the international community, and the Interpol to help speed up finding those criminals and bring them to justice. Because it is said that justice delayed is justice denied. We deeply request for your support in the building of a memorial site here in Washington, D.C., hopefully by 2026, because such a place would allow survivors to reflect, grieve, and remember their loved ones, because not all survivors are able to return to their origins. This memorial would be also essential space for healing and education for next generations. So we urge all you to acknowledge also and act against ongoing atrocities in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where the Tutsi are once being targeted. Genocide must be recognized. Genocide must not be recognized only after the fact. It is happening now. The world must act now. We say never again, and we must mean it. To Rwanda youth, I want to take this time to remind you to carry the torch forward. Stand on the shoulders of those who fought to stop the genocide. The Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF Inkotanyi. We owe them immense gratitude for their selfless sacrifices. With God and through them, we are here because they gave themselves selflessly. Inkotanyi mwarakoze. So, as the years go by, our story may be lost or forgotten. Let us write books, produce documentaries, speak boldly, and teach the world the truth about a genocide against the Tutsi. Fellow Rwandans, friend of Rwanda, let us stand together in unity with our government in these times. Let me conclude my remarks by saying we are only as strong as we are united. Thank you for your kind attention. God bless you all.
Thank you, Emmanuel, for your remarks on behalf of Kwibuka DMV. I would like at this moment to welcome Gustav Mukurarinda, who's going to be sharing with us his testimony as a survivor of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi.
Thank you. I'm going to try to share my testimony of how I survived the genocide. I'll try to make it in the time I was given. But I also have I've put my testimony in a book that's called The Snowfall, One Boy's Account of the 1994 Genocide against the Tutsi. So I hope I'll be able to put it in a few words. So my story, I will start my story just 2 days before the genocide. There was an event that happened at my house, at my home. And I just woke up that one day, was on April 5th. And I saw everyone was busy at home. They were preparing for some guests, but I didn't know who. And I tried to ask my siblings, they also didn't know. Then a few hours later, there's two gentlemen showed up. One was an old man, and I have never seen my parents so excited, and they were even crying and hugging this old man. And I heard this old man calling my dad my son, and calling my mom my daughter-in-law. And I was confused because as a child, I was almost 11 years old that time, and they never told us about the fate of our grandparents, our grandfathers, but I knew they told us that just went to heaven. Say like every time we asked about our grandfathers, they told us they went to heaven, but we didn't know what happened. And all of a sudden, we saw this old man calling my mother his daughter-in-law, and my father his son, and they were confused. And then my father, like, he was so emotional, and then he told us, actually, this is not my father, but he's my uncle. He's my father's younger brother, and he's been living in Bugesera all this time, but I didn't know he was alive, and he didn't know I was alive. So they've been in the same country for 30 years, and I was born in Nyanza, of course, and Bugesera and Nyanza is not far apart, but they never knew. Like my father's uncle didn't know my father was alive, and my father didn't know he was alive. So, and then later in the evening, after a big celebration, neighbors came in, family members, they celebrated, and then in the evening we were just our family, so it was time now. They had no choice but to tell us what really happened. So then they had to tell us all the truth. So what happened actually is that my father's uncle, his name was Gakwaya. Mr. Gakwaya was one of those Tutsi who were taken forcefully to Bugesera from their hometown in 1960. And he was taken from Bufundu. So Bufundu was in the south of Rwanda right now. So there was two regions that were affected in those in 1960 and 1963, and there was Bufundu and Bunyambiriri. So my father was originally from Bunyambiriri, but his uncle lived on the other side of the river Rukarara, which was in Bufundu, and that's where my mother was from. So so they told us how they were hunted in 1960, and just that time, Rwanda, they didn't have the army, so they were actually hunted by the Belgians and the Parmehutu militia, together with the soldier that the Belgians used were from Congo. And to the point that they actually, they even brought helicopters. Imagine to bring helicopters in 1960 to hunt people. And now I understood why. Every time I went to my mother's village in Bufundu as a kid, they used to call helicopter Gatemanhochi. So Gatemanhochi means something that cuts the banana leaves. So because they used to bring it down with the big lights during the night and with the blades. So it would be like, we blow away the bushes and the banana leaves so they can actually catch people. So, and then after he was taken to Bugesera, of course, my grandfather, Rutezabiri, was left. He was on the other side of the river in Bunyambiriri. And my grandfather, Samagwera, like my mother's father, actually, they survived that manhunt, so they stayed. only in 1963, on Christmas Day, they were both killed. And my father had to say actually his testimony, what really happened, because he even had a scar of where he was actually, also he was hit by a spear, because they were killing all the boys and all the men and boys. So, and that was in 1963. So Mr. Gakwaya, who went to Bugesera, never knew his brother was killed in 1963. And my father, who survived those killings of 1963, actually managed to flee and went to live in Nyanza, which was at that time as a safe haven for Tutsi. Also didn't know his uncle was alive in Bugesera. So it was on that day, April 5th, where they met through a friend who also had survived the same killings in 1963 and who lived in Bugesera and met Gakwaya, and he managed to reunite them. So, and before we went to bed that night, my father just called all of us and asked his uncle, look at my children and tell me who looked like his grandfather. And Mr. Gakwaya, our new found like a grandfather, because we called him grandfather since that time. He said he chose one of my brothers and say, that's the one, his name is Tassien. And then my father said, so now you know if anything happened to me or and your mother, this is gonna be the chief of the family. But again, that was not the first time he said that. I've heard the same word like maybe a year before that, when they were killing of Tutsi in Bugesera. And that day my father came home, so they were killing Tutsi. And all these things happened before the plane, by the way. So, because for those who say that the plane was the reason of the genocide, so I never knew my grandfather, and I don't know anybody in our family who had a grandfather. So actually, grandfather was not something it was not a thing in our family, even our extended family. In my grandma's village in Bufundu, there was no man like, let's say at the age of my grandfather. So then a year before that, I remember my father saying the same thing, say like, if something happened to me and your mother, because he was now talking to my older brother, said like, is this how you're gonna treat your brother if something was happening to us? And then I went to bed that night asking myself, why is he keeping saying that? Is this thing that they just shared, is this going to happen to us too? But only 2 days after that, it started happening. So as I said, we lived in Nyanza, which was considered before like as a safe haven for Tutsi. And of course, there was also a mayor in Nyanza. His name was Gisagara. He was a Hutu, but he really fought so hard to prevent the killings in Nyanza, and he managed to do that for 2 weeks. And the president in place that time, Mr. Sindi Kubwabu, came to Butare, and then he gave a speech actually asking, telling all the Hutus who's been trying to act as they are not concerned, that they're going to actually deal with them. And they killed this man, Mr. Gisagara, and they tied him on a pickup truck and dragged him all over the town of Nyanza just to show the Hutu, see, this is the man who was actually stopping you from doing this. This is what we're doing to him. And they started killing us on April 21st. So, and at least we had 2 weeks of grace period, that's how I called it. And those 2 weeks, probably, my dad managed to actually contact some of his Hutu friends and to hide us. And we were 5 kids and our mother. And he took me and my younger sister to one of my auntie had married a Hutu. And they lived right next door to us. But he took me and my younger sister to the parents of this man. His name was Bosco. And took my 2 brothers to another family, another Hutu family, and my mom and my sister to another one. So where he took us was like maybe 15 kilometers from, excuse me if I say kilometers, from Canada, so I don't know. So I don't know how to convert that. So it was like 15 kilometers from our home, and it was my first time to be there. So we were safe because this old man, the father of Bosco, really tried to protect us a few times. There was two big raids. No, the first raid, they tried to ask who are these kids, and he said, these are my grandchildren. So they understood because they really respect him in that community. But also, maybe before we get to the first raid, there was also other members of my family who actually joined us, but they didn't stay long. But we ended up with one of my aunts left us with her 4 years old daughter, my cousin, Diane. And we had, now, before I left home, of course, I was now turning 11. I turned 11 like in the middle of the genocide. And my parents told me, here's your sister, she was 9, so take care of her, make sure you guys survive. So now my aunt also gave me like my 4 years old cousin. So now I had to take care of 2 of them. So the first raid, this old man really was nice, and then he said, don't touch them, these are my grandkids. They asked him, why do they look like Tutsi? He was like, you know, it's because their mother is one, so they left. And then after that first raid, actually we saw my other cousin, who was 15, Francoise. She actually, because she was hiding in the bushes after actually they killed a lot of people that was with her, and she ended up with us. So now we were 4 of us. And a few days later, trying to actually go a little fast. A few days later, my father also arrived there in the middle of the night. After also he's been running all over the place, and he ended up in that place. And I was lucky to talk to him. I was actually the last one to talk to him in my family. And he told me that he couldn't stay in the same house because it would be risky for all of us, because they say like, me, I have to go somewhere else. So if they kill me, so they don't have to kill you guys. So he left. And 2 days later, there was another big raid, and it started in the house we were hiding. So the old man, again, protected us. And luckily, my cousin, who was 15, of course, she wasn't gonna be, because then people in the community knew this old man didn't have a 15 years old, like a granddaughter. So luckily she was like in a room, like sleeping, because this man was very respected. They didn't, whenever they asked him, do you have anybody inside? He said, I don't have anybody, everybody else is outside. They respected him. Then they went across the street in the house where my father was hiding. So they caught him, and we were actually standing outside when we saw them catching him. And they celebrated that because they wanted him. And they started hitting him, like pushing him. Like they stopped. They caught it a day after they caught my father, but they took him because they had to parade him, of course, from that area to Gatagara, where they killed him. And a few minutes later, also they took the man who was hiding him. They beat him up, and as a lesson to never do that again. And that man just came back and told us that my father, they just killed him. Then, but again, I didn't know what was going on with my mom and my other siblings. So then, again, a few days later, like maybe 10 days later, we also heard the news that my mom was killed. And she was killed actually, wherever she went, my dad took her. They were kicked out and then ended up again in our neighborhood in Gihisi or Hanika, for those who know Nyanza. And she was killed right there. And then one of the boys who was doing the errands for that family actually went there and then came back and told us. So only just that same night after we learned that my mom was killed, it was 3 a.m. And the old man who has been trying to protect us actually woke us up in the middle of the night and told us to get out. It was in the middle of nowhere. We didn't know how to get. We didn't even know what to do because we were kids. We actually didn't know what. We knew there were a lot of roadblocks around. We knew they were killing everybody, all the Tutsi, but we didn't know what to do. We didn't know where to go. So the only thing we knew was like, so this man is kicking us out. So we actually going to his son's house because that's the only person we know who can protect us. So the father is kicking us out, but we think that we could go to his son for protection. So, but after we left, but we didn't know what to do, and one of his nephew came out and he told us, I will actually walk you to the safe area. So we didn't know what he meant by that, but apparently he didn't want us to be killed right in front of their house. So he walked us, it was in the middle of the night, we were skipping the roadblocks until we arrived in Gatagara, a place that I knew. And he was like, okay, I think you guys know these areas. I think you can go back to Gihisi where you know. And I say, but can you, but at the time it was already maybe almost 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. And he was like, do you guys see that roadblock over there? So if you can skip that one, because that one is now very hard, there's another one next to it. Those two are not really bad. You can skip them. And then you can go, and there's only one roadblock that you will meet, and it's not that bad too. But in reality, there's no roadblock that was easy. But the first one he showed us, we didn't see people like in the middle of the road, because they were hatching a cow like on the side of it. They were just like sharing the meat and everything, so they were not really, it was early in the morning, so they didn't care about us. And the second one he told us, actually, that one, they saw us, and we couldn't even hide, because before we actually left, we had rehearsed a story that we would tell if anyone just catch us. They would tell that our father was a Hutu, and they didn't know in our community, so they tried to kill my mom and us, but now they found out, so we were going back. So that was the story we're trying to tell. But this time we got to that roadblock. All these guys, they knew me because they were mostly Abashumba, cowhands, who used to come, because in my neighborhood we had the veterinary clinic, so all the cowhands from the region, they used to bring their cows there, and I was so passionate about the cows, so they loved me so much, and because I used to spend time with them. And when they saw me, they said, oh, look at that kid, we know him, like we can't kill this one, because he always came to hang out with us, even though, because they thought we were rich, because my parents were teachers, so for them we were rich, and for me to hang out with them all the time, they thought I was good. They liked it, and then they told me, they say, we cannot kill you. So but on that roadblock, there was 2 or 3 who wanted to kill us. Mostly, they say, but even if they don't kill us, they wanted to take my sisters, to rape them. And those happened to be the 3 who really wanted to rape my sisters. They happened to be the Abattoir. So, because some of the Abattoir participated in the genocide as well, alongside the Hutus. And some of them probably also tried to hide the Tutsi, but those ones, so my friends, Abashumba friends, they tried to convince them. At some point, they let us go. And then, from there, we continued our journey, but remember, we were trying to actually go in the whole road. We didn't know. The man who walked us, he told us there's only one roadblock after that. That's what we believed. But then a few meters later, we walked a few meters, and then I saw one of my my colleagues from school. His name was Emable. He was actually in a tree, like eating guavas, and he saw us, and then he jumped, and then he was like, "Where are you guys going?" We told him, and said, "No, you cannot do that." I said, "Why?" Say, like, you see, if you walk, like probably. He was also brother of Ugira Shebuja, who was the mayor. He's now one of those genocide perpetrators who are in the UK. And this kid told me, like, you cannot skip that one. That guy is dangerous, he's my uncle, I know him, he will kill you. And even if you skip that one, there's another one owned by this man called Michel. Michel was, they were from a family known as, they were butchers, that was their job. So even if you skip that one, there's another one for Michel. But even if you skip that one, there's another one from Vincent Zigimfura. Vincent Zigimfura also was the richest of those butchers. He was the brother of Michel. And unfortunately, he lives here in Dayton, Ohio. And yeah, it's hard. And his daughter actually had, because I've been trying to follow him, just write a lot about on social media. And then his daughter one time found my number and called me and threatened me and told me, you know what, this is the United States, it's not Rwanda. You're wasting your time. So, and he said, even if we skip that one, there's another one of another one of their brother called Chamatare. Say, there's no way you can skip all those three. And then he showed us a shortcut he used to take going to school. He said, you can use this one. This is the shortcut I used to go to school. At least, because you use bushes and forest, so you won't meet any roadblock. And we used that one, but also, almost at the end, we also met another friend. His name was Gakuba. So I knew him because he used to come to visit one of our neighbors. So Gakuba also told us, where you guys going? Because he was he was actually working on his farm. And then we told him where we were going, and he said like, oh yeah, unfortunately there's already a roadblock that was just set up where you were trying to go. So I will actually show you another way. So he took us another way. He also took us to this one place, say like, okay, from here I cannot go further because they know I don't participate in killing. So if they see me with you, they also kill me. So, and then he let us go. But then also as we walked, we saw another man, who too, his name was Kabanda. Kabanda also saw us from his house, and then he followed us. Because actually, when we saw that house, I told my sisters, we have to really walk fast, because there's a bunch of young men in that house, so there's no way, some of them must be really participating in this thing. But when we tried to run, and then he saw us, Kabanda, and called us. And they say, he gave us something to eat, but he told us we cannot keep you guys here because we do not participate in the killings, and they search our house very often because of that. So, and he took us to this one house, and this one house was, it's a family that were very, very good friend with my family. The family was called Giterane. The man from that family was Giterane, but he had passed away a few years before that. But they were very, very, very good friends with our family. So they took us to Giterane's, but the goal was still to go to Bosco's house, my aunt's husband. So we arrived there, and then surprisingly, they put me in a room, and someone was in the ceiling, hiding in the ceiling, and that was my sister, my older sister. And she wanted to talk to me, because they told her we were trying to actually go to Bosco's house. And my sister told me the news that actually Bosco was responsible of my mother's death. My aunt's husband was the one who actually came to that same house and took my mother to the killers. And that was a big disappointment. And again, at Giterane's house, they have found my father there before, and he escaped. And that's where they found my mother. And it was two sisters, the daughters of Giterane, who were trying to do all of that to protect us. And one of their brothers had actually given them a warning. He was a policeman, Mr. Ozier. He told them if they ever find another Tutsi in their house, he will actually kill them. He killed his own sisters. But there was no other way my sister could hide, because my sister was really like one of the most wanted Tutsi, even though she was only 18. But her name was once said on RTLM, so everybody knew her, and they always said that before we find her, we haven't done anything. So, and that was the only way. So she had to stay in that ceiling, but she only had to stay in one position. It was the wall that overlap in the ceiling. So she had to stay on that because, those ceilings, they were not like hard enough. So she had to stay on that wall all the time. And that was the only way she could be, but they couldn't keep us. So they had to find another way to take us. And really, there was no one who wanted to hide us in the area, because they said, because they were actually looking for all of us, say, if they catch any of us, we have to say where my sister is. So then in the evening, they found a solution. So they took us to two of their brothers. They took my sister to one of their brothers, and that one of their brothers who had a Tutsi wife. So my sister was easily blended in with their kids. But for me, they took me to Uziel's house, the policeman, who actually warned them that he would kill them. Because he did not live at his house, he stayed at the commune's office, that's like a district office. That's where he lived, it was a little far. And he had vowed that he would only return to his house when they finished all the Tutsis. And his wife accepted to hide me, his wife and his son. His son, who was also a killer, but he respected his mom. And he told me, I respect my mom, so I'm not gonna kill you unless you ask me for it. Because I have so much experience now, I only hit once. So if you don't wanna have any pain, just let me know. If they catch you, I would do you a favor. And he will always come home every night, like bragging about the people he has killed and everything. So, and then nobody could ever, the reason why they actually took me to Uziel's house is because nobody could ever search his house. They knew nobody could, he was the best patriot around, so nobody could ever try to search his house. But again, a few days later, there was a group of soldiers who came from Kigali. They were like a presidential guard. They had a meeting on every roadblocks when they were distributing guns. And they say that now they have to search every house. Every house, even the ones they don't touch, they have to search them. And they were already suspecting that some of us might be around in that area, but they're not sure. So then the information came to, these people were helping us. But in Nyanza, there was this orphanage where it was owned by Italian priest. Every kid who tried to reach that orphanage, they survived. But it was so hard because the orphanage was surrounded by 2 roadblocks, very dangerous, and so many kids were killed trying to reach the orphanage. So, but the goal for everyone, every kid who was still alive, was to reach that orphanage. So then they planned, because really they were good people. The 2 sisters, daughters of Giterane, there were 2 brothers of Satsiwich Kabanda. They were really helping us. So they managed to make a plan to take us there. And that plan was they chose the market day. So there's in small towns, there used to be that one big day, that's they call the market day, where everybody goes to the market. And in Nyanza, life went on during the genocide. People still went to the market, people still did their business as usual. So even on the market day, Nyanza was so busy. So they said that was the perfect time for sneaking in and then take us to the orphanage. And that's exactly what they did. And but I didn't go with my sister. My sister was, we actually met almost at the gate of the orphanage, because on the market days, even roadblocks, they were loose because people keep walking in big numbers. So all they do is to show the IDs from far. So they really didn't have much time to pay attention to the kids. So, and the way I looked, pretty much nobody could even pay attention to me, because that was probably after almost over a month. I never took a shower or anything, my hair, So yeah, the way I looked, probably nobody could have paid attention to me. So, and we arrived at the orphanage, and we were surprised because I found my cousins there, so many kids that really I thought they were killed. So I remember that at the end of the genocide, they say that we were actually almost 500 of us who found refuge in that orphanage. And this Italian priest, his name was Father Eros. He's now in retirement in Italy. Because the reason why they never attacked the orphanage, they did attack the orphanage a few times, but they had an Italian flag, and he always told the perpetrators, if you attack this orphanage, it's like you're attacking the country. And he used to bribe them, he used to do a lot of things. And of course, this was an orphanage that had only 150 kids before, so now we ended up being 600, so it was hard. And then there's a lot of that happened there, so maybe I won't have time to go in details. But in the end, they now came to kill us. There were soldiers who came before, but they came to actually attack the orphanage. But at the same time, but just coming back a little bit is, by the time we went to the orphanage, we had hope. We had hope because we knew, remember, like some of these kids who went to the from the orphanage who lived there before, they were Hutus, so they could go outside, they could go and then see what was happening in the city, in the town. And every time they came, they told us there was so many soldiers, like a government soldier who were wounded. So we knew Inkotanyi were not far. The RPF were not far to save us. So yes, only until a few, yeah, we knew they were not far. So, and even by the time they attacked us, they knew they were actually fleeing. They were on their way fleeing, but they actually wanted to stop and loot and kill. And by that time, they were at the orphanage, the soldiers. They actually found out Inkotanyi were in Mugandamure, that's probably 2 kilometers from the orphanage. And then they took all the loot, or they wanted to take, and they left. And that's how the next day, the Inkotanyi were at the orphanage. And that's how we saved, and I was lucky to stay with them. I was one of the kids who actually were lucky to live with Inkotanyi, because from that day they came, we became kids again. We became kids again, and then whenever they came to visit us, we would just take their pants, say like, you're not leaving me, I'm coming with you, and they didn't have a choice, so they took me and my cousin. I stayed with them for like 5 months until I went back to school and found my family. They even helped me to find my sister, where she was. And so what I can say is that I tried my best, but I have my testimony detailed in my book. And what the last word I can say is, it is sad because we see what is happening with the genocide denier. But what's also sad is to see that genocide perpetrators can find a safe haven in these countries, and they are protected. So these days we see in the news people, immigrants being deported, and I keep watching to see if one of the genocide perpetrators is being deported, but we don't see that. So which means, I don't know, they have some force behind them that is protecting them, and that's where probably why they were able to successfully commit a genocide. So thank you. Yeah, that's my testimony.
I would like to encourage anybody who can to please seek out his memoir. I was one of the people who had the privilege of reading the book he mentioned. The title is The Snowfall, and it's the story, the account of the 1994 genocide from the eyes, the outlook of an 11-year-old. And I think it is one of the most uniquely written stories, because oftentimes we think of the genocide as having an impact on adults. We very rarely think about the journey, the harrowing journey of survival of children in this journey. And that has brought a new understanding to me as well, as a young Rwandan, of what it means to truly say never again in times like these. So without taking long, I would like to welcome His Eminence Cardinal to step forward for a word of prayer and comfort, and then we'll go on with the rest of the program. Thank you.
My dear brothers and sisters, we gather today in solemn remembrance of one of the saddest chapters of our shared human history, the genocide against the Tutsis in Rwanda. We mourn the thousands of lives lost in 1994 due to the systemic dehumanization and unspeakable violence that was intensely personal and often carried out by neighbors, co-workers, or even family members, wounding the very soul of a nation. We pause to reflect with disappointment on the times when voices that should have spoken out were silent in the face of evil as the genocide unfolded. We must prayerfully acknowledge the moments when our witness to the gospel faltered in the face of fear. The church, while a refuge for many, must also reckon with the ways in which she failed to protect, to speak, and to love with courageous charity. Yet even in the heart of such sorrow, the light of Christ was not extinguished. We remember the brave, those brave souls who risked their lives to shelter others. We remember the quiet martyrs who refused to raise a hand against their sisters and brothers, and those who, even in death, bore witness to a faith stronger than fear. Remembering is not only the ability to look back, but also the ability to look ahead. Our faith teaches us that every person bears the image of God, beyond ethnicity, beyond tribal membership, beyond all human divisions. The cross of Christ gathers all people, all wounds, and all injustices into the redeeming love of God. Let us pray. God of mercy and compassion, as we honor the memory of the victims, let us commit ourselves anew to the gospel of peace. Let our remembrance deepen our solidarity with all who suffer persecution, all who are forgotten, and all whose dignity is denied. Forgive us for the times we turned away from suffering, failed to speak out, to intervene, to love as you call us to love. May the church in Rwanda and throughout the world be evermore a beacon of reconciliation, justice, and healing. For we know that you have conquered death and are raising up a new generation of peacemakers, prophets, and healers in our own time. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence. At this moment, I would like to call forward the children who are going to lead us in a moment of reflection, in a moment of lighting candles and taking a moment to think about the families that were lost in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. So I'll ask Alan to step forward with the children. As they do so, let us prepare our candles. We're going to light them as they sing and share the names of those we are remembering, some of those we are remembering today.
bawe bazize uko bavutse
mu bihe nk'ibi dufate mu mugongo
abahungabanye
dusangiye akababaro mwese mwabuze abanyu
ihorere mama ihorere shenge
uhumure kandi mukomere cyane
ntituzabatererana.
Today, we take a moment to remember and honor the people who lost their lives during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Each name we read belonged to someone: a mother, father, sister, brother, or friend. They were loved and their lives mattered. By saying their names, we make sure they are never forgotten.
We remember the Queen Rosalia Gichanda.
We remember Gapari Alexandre, his wife Nawera Angeline, and their kid Wimundu Lilian.
We remember Goreti Mukarugero and Tarsis Simuganwa.
We remember Sengyumva Thomas and his grandmother Mukamusoni.
We remember the family of Kayihura Emmanuel and Kinyarwanda Bernadette, their kids Kayihura Jean-Luc, Kayihura Espérance, Kayihura Delphine.
We remember Uwimbabazi Beatrice and her son Eric Mucho Rugemandinzi.
We remember Mukazaire Claudette and her kids Kalisa Jules and Kamali Eve.
turibuka umuryango wa Nsengimana Fulgence and Cécile Mukwesaye and their son Hubert, and we also remember the family of Ngeruka Gahonzire Paul and Niyibanje José and their kids Yves Muyenzi and Eric Wirabone.
We remember the Semucho family: Godios Semucho, Dativ Mukangira, Irene Mucho, Brice Mucho, Jean-Aimé Mucho, and Amandine Muzihiza.
We remember Musabe Jose and her kids Musabe Anne and Musabe Ivan.
We remember Butera Raffaeli and Mukakarema Christian.
We remember Muka Rusine Candide Kayumba Andre and their daughter Kayuma Parfait.
We remember Marcel Ramutsa, Naskola Ramutsa.
We remember Mujawase Zaferine, her kids Butare Alexis, Chatengerwa Umuhoza Regine.
Turibuka Dazie Joachim Kayimbaire Providence and their kids Nyamushanja Richard. We remember Kayehura Michel, Mujawingo Margoretti, and their kids Kagoeri Jacqueline Kyuzuzo Cadet.
Turibuka umuryango wa Mukama Paul na Nyirarukanga Yolande n'abana babo Mukama Claudine, Mukama Bosco, Mukama Beatrice, Mukama Joseline na Mukama Esperance.
We remember Gloria Kawano and Mutoni Basse Angelique.
We have read many names today, but there are so many more we cannot say. Even though we cannot name them all, we remember each one. They were loved, they had dreams, each one deserves so much more, and they will always be in our hearts.
To those who lost family, friends, and loved ones, we stand with you in remembrance and in sorrow. Their absence is deeply felt, but their memory lives on in our hearts, in our stories, and in our commitment to ensure that such darkness never again occurs. May we honor them not only in words, but in the way we choose to live, with love, unity, and peace.
Humura, humura Rwanda, wabuze abawe bazize uko bavutse. Mu bihe nk'ibi dufate mu mugongo abahungabanye, dusangiye akababaro mwese mwabuze abanyu. Ihorere mama, ihorere shenge, muhumure kandi mukomere cyane, ntituzabatererana.
Thank you to our youth for guiding us in that moment of reflection and remembrance. I oftentimes like to say that if there's something that creates and keeps the flames of hope alive in our hearts, is to see our young ones carrying the memory and the meaning of never again in their hearts, and knowing that they're going to be going on sustaining the peace and sustaining the progress and healing and growth that the nation has achieved to date. I would like in this moment to welcome Dr. Adulia de Mello, Vice Provost for Global Strategies here at Catholic University, to share her remarks on behalf of the President of the University. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the Catholic University of America. I am Dr. Adulia de Mello, Vice Provost for Global Strategies and Professor of Astrophysics. On behalf of our President, Dr. Peter Kilpatrick, who unfortunately could not be with us today, I extend his warmest greetings and appreciation for your presence. We are truly honored to have you here. Your voices, your messages are vital. Gustav, thank you for your beautiful story. We will always remember your family in our hearts. It is really important for us to look forward to the reflections and insights you share with us. Today, we gather in solemn remembrance of one of the darkest chapters in recent human history, the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. It was a time when the world stood by in silence as communities were torn apart by unimaginable violence. The scars of that tragedy remain not only in Rwanda's history, but in the collective conscience of humanity. But today, we also recognize something profound: Rwanda's extraordinary journey of resilience, its commitment to justice, its pursuit of reconciliation, and its ongoing efforts to heal and unify a nation. In remembering the past, we reaffirm our shared responsibility, not just to dream of a better future, but to work together to build one. A future where human dignity is upheld, where human rights are respected, and where compassion triumphs over hatred and division. Last year, I stood here with many of you during Kwibuka 30 commemoration. I'm proud to say that since then, our collaboration has begun to blossom. Just last month, the Catholic University of America signed a memorandum of understanding with the Catholic University of Rwanda, an important step in deepening the connection between our institutions and our countries. Today, we are privileged to have 20 bright and driven Rwandan students on our campus. You will meet some of them today. These young scholars carry with them the dreams of a renewed Rwanda, and their presence here enriches our university in countless ways. Their aspirations, their stories, and their strength inspire us and align with our mission to uphold the dignity of every human person, to promote peace and social justice, and to stand for the protection of human rights across the globe and in this nation. We are committed to being part of Rwanda's next chapter. Finally, I wish to thank the organizers for this important and beautiful event, and to extend my heartfelt hope that today's gathering will spark meaningful dialogue, healing, and continued partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. De Mello. At this point, I would like to move on with the next section of the program. We are going to welcome Dr. Jean Kaitsinga, who is a research specialist at the Julian Samora Research Institute of University Outreach and Engagement at Michigan State University. Dr. Kaitsinga is interested in understanding the social and historical context and root causes of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. He's a sociologist with specialization in sociology of family, demography, rural sociology, research methods, and statistical methodologies. He's going to be sharing with us a brief presentation on the history and the roots and the root causes of the 1994 genocide.
My name is Jean Kaitsinga. First, thank you for the invitation to come here and commemorate with you. This is personal. We are gathered to remember the loved ones who were killed in 1994 just because they were Tutsi. So it's important to understand the social historical context and the root causes of the genocide against the Tutsi. In this presentation, I try to talk about the different era, the pre-colonization, but also the colonization that really created the division between the Hutu and Tutsi and led to the killing in 1994. And then also the government that followed post-independence that instituted discrimination that led finally to the genocide against the Tutsi. And then I'll talk about briefly the genocide against the Tutsi and how the Rwanda Patriotic Army ended that genocide. And briefly also the role of international community, which couldn't stop the genocide. And then at the end, emphasis of unity and resiliency of the Rwandan people. So this genocide, over 1 million Tutsi were killed in 100 days. And that is an underestimate because every year when we remember, people are still discovered and reburied in honor to remember. But first and foremost, we are here to remember the loved ones who were just killed because they were Tutsi. Allow me to allow me to remember my parents. On this picture, I see my dad and my mom. I remember them. I also remember my 6 siblings. My older sister, Kaitesi Edith, my older brother, Kaitare Jean-Baptiste, my younger brother, Karangwa Bonaventure, my younger brother, Kamatari Jean Bosco, and my younger sister, Kairere Chantal, and the last one in our family, Kangwaneza Mbabazi. So the genocide against the Tutsi was committed using a racist ideology known as Hutu power. It was an organized and planned political operation with the intention to completely eliminate the Tutsi. In Rwanda, perpetrators were Hutu extremists, officials and leaders, the military, especially the presidential guard, and unfortunately young people, the youth militias, Interahamwe, Mpuzamigambi, Nkuba, who were trained, armed, brainwashed, and indoctrinated in ethnic hatred towards Tutsi. It's unfortunate because this ethnic hatred continues now beyond Rwanda. That's what is happening in East DRC. But also ordinary people were killed. Were mobilized using radio and newspaper. Now they are using social media to spray the hatred ideology. But how was Rwanda before? Was Rwanda united? In the pre-colonial era, the kingdom of Rwanda dating from the 13th century, and the Nyinya dynasty established in the 16th century beyond the Rwanda Rwagasabo, and they expanded Rwanda. If you look at this map, now we have even part of Vendoro in Uganda, that was part of Rwanda. In DRC, the area you hear, Masisi, Rutshuro, this was part of Rwanda before the division of Africa in 1885 during the Berlin Conference when all countries were divided. So if we hear today, for example, the M23 say, okay, go back to Rwanda. No, this is where they are from. You can't say go back to Rwanda where they lived here. So we have to look at the history of this region. When I was looking at the pre-colonial period, I think we need to study more about King Ruganzu Ndori, 16th century, Kirima Rujugira, and later Kigeri Rwabugiri, who really expanded the country, but also Rwanda was a cohesive society. There was no ethnic divisions. And especially Kigeri also had a strong military, and also invented both agricultural and pastoral techniques to improve the production, but also had commercial with neighbors, and he stopped the Arab slave traders at that time. But as a sociologist, I want to look at also the social stratification then. Was there Hutu and Tutsi? So the constructs of Tutsi didn't exist as it later became in the 20th century. Let me highlight that these were not ethnic groups, because people there, they speak the same language, they still do speak the same language. We have same religious beliefs, live together in communities, and have allegiance to the same leader, the king, and shared the same culture. But the relation between them was not a source of confrontation. Yes, like every society, frequent hostilities were between families or clans, but not between Hutus and Tutsi as was portrayed. So Hutu and Tutsi classification stratification was based largely on social status, rather ethnic groups. Individuals could be both Hutu in relation to his patron and Tutsi in relation to his own client. So there was a possibility for a Hutu to become a Tutsi, or vice versa, from a Tutsi to become the Hutu based on that. When you look at the history of the country, the military expansion in defense of Rwanda involved both Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa as Banyarwanda, as people of Rwanda, and not as Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa. So the sense of social solidarity among Rwandans was greater prior to the arrival of European colonization. And of course that changed. What I wanted to highlight that Rwanda before colonization was united and was very cohesive. The first colonization was done by Germans. In 1885, the Berlin Conference declared that Rwanda or Burundi was going to be a protectorate of Germany. And the first Germany came to Rwanda, Van Gotzen. But they bring with them the European model of race codification. They assumed that Rwanda kingdom was divided in ethnic hierarchies between Tutsi and Hutu. That's why it started. They applied the European racist ideology and assumed that the taller, light-skinned Tutsi were more natural losers and were considered superior race across Europeans in physical appearance. And they were considered a ruling class over Hutu, and where Hutu were destined to serve. So these racist assumptions, of course wrong, increase the kingdom and Tutsi influence and power, creating more social division. So what happened when you give one group more power, more privilege, then you create more social inequities and more social division. And that's how it started. But the worst part was done, the colonization by Belgium. At the defeat of Germany in World War I, Belgium took over the control of Rwanda, Burundi, and Congo. And they really created these ethnic groups, Tutsi and Hutu. It was a more centralized government, but they emphasized this ethnic stratification. First, restricting chief officers to Tutsi, upsetting the existing traditional balance between the groups. Again, once you privilege one group, you create more inequities. The Christian mission also played its role during colonization. And they started converting the ruling Tutsi, but also by educating them, again, giving them more privilege. So the Hutu-Tutsi official categorization reinforced the Tutsi privilege of power then, both politically and legally, and created more polarization of the two groups. My point here is the two groups were socially constructed during that era. To too much went on during the colonization of by Belgium. At that time in the 50s, the Tutsi began to campaign for independence from Belgium. And because Belgians believed that Hutu were easier to control, they shift their support to them and began to replace Tutsi chiefs with Hutu chiefs. They even participated in killing and also moving people. One of mentioned to Bugesera, where they were mushed to die there, and others went in exile. But also both the Catholic missions and colonial administration became more considerate of the welfare of the Hutu. But I want to highlight something. The hatred ideology here started in 1959 with Palme Hutu, but also there was so-called Hutu Manifesto, which called Hutu social, moral, and political uplift, liberation of the Hutu, Hamid from Tutsi, and arguing that Rwanda belongs just to the Hutu and Tutsi should be eliminated. And towards the independence, the premise of Tutsi superiority as descendant of immigrants. So this is the Hamid theory. They say they are coming from Egypt and Ethiopia, meaning they label them as alien, which means they legitimize their existence as citizens of Rwanda. And tensions in Rwanda really deep in November 1959, where they attacked Tutsi, burned houses, killed cows, and several 100,000 Tutsi were killed. One mentioned in the south of Kivu, but was everywhere. I would call that the first genocide against the Tutsi, and more fled to neighboring countries, to Uganda, Burundi, and far. 1962, Belgium and UN announced independence and Kayibanda became president. Like elsewhere in Africa, colonial power did not do anything to erase pre-colonial realities. Instead, they socially fragmented the country along these ethnic groups between Hutu and Tutsi. So after the independence, I'm kind of going quick, Kayibanda became president. So I want you really to, genocide is an extreme patterns of ethnic relations when one group completely decides to exterminate the other. But one of the main factors is the state. So the government that followed after the independence, the Kayibanda especially, it had an anti-Tutsi caste. And between 61, 63, and 64, more Tutsi were killed. And the remaining in Tutsi in Rwanda, they were discriminated in all sectors. I can testify that I was living in Rwanda. We couldn't go to education, starting with elementary school. Even when you passed, you couldn't go to high school. There was one university then. You were discriminated because you were Tutsi. So Kayibanda institutionalized discrimination and further polarized the colonial divide between Tutsi and Hutu. In 1973, if you recall, Tutsi were chased from high school but also to the university and they were killed. I remember that because my older sister was in Rulindo and my brother was also in Rulindo. People were killed then. Again, more massacres of Tutsi took place and others went to exile abroad. You can call that a second genocide of Tutsi. 1973, Habyarimana came to power with a military coup. This was another totalitarian regime which consolidated power in favor of Vozov from his region in Gisenyi, but also his wife in Ruhengeri, now Musanze, what we call Akazu, which was responsible for the genocide in Rwanda. That regime was, of course, supported by France, Belgium, and other Western donors with a large for foreign aid. But despite the claim of Rwanda being a peaceful country at that time, Habyarimana didn't want to let Rwandans in diaspora to come back home. It was in the 90s, was also an economic crisis, the world push for democratization, and that's what people really saw the institutional ethnic discrimination that exists there. There were also new political parties that were created. 1990, that I remember, because I left the country July 1st, 1919. The war started October 1st, 1990. That's how I survived. So the Rwanda Patriotic Front asked the government then to let Rwandans to go back home. And they say no. Country is so small and overpopulated. October 1st, the Rwanda Patriotic Front entered militarily. If you recall, soon after, in Kigali, 10,000 people, mostly Tutsi in Kigali, were arrested and others were killed. Because of the war, the ceasefire later on was reached, 1992, Arusha in Tanzania, but extremists didn't want that peace accord to continue. We are here to remember loved ones. They were killed from April 7 to July 4th in 1994. And the slaughter was ended by the Rwanda Patriotic Front led by His Excellency President Kagame. And at that time, the international organization was in Kigali and couldn't stop that genocide. I want to also highlight that that's when the Interahamwe and the defeated army went to Congo and now creating chaos there. I can go into more details about the different stage of genocide, classification, us versus them, Tutsi versus Hutu. If you recall the speech by Mugesera, Tutsi belong to Ethiopia and we are going to find them a shortcut to get them where they, and they throw them in Biakajera. I remember that image here when cops were in the river Akajera. Sampleization. So many people died because they have an identity with ethnicity. If you Tutsi were killed in Rwanda. This was created by Belgium in 1933 with a census identifying who was Tutsi and Hutu. Methodologically was not a good census because they counted if you have 10 cows, you are Tutsi, but the Hutu had cows. They used physical and phenotypical characteristics, your nose, or whether your height, or whether you're a farmer or agriculturalist. But the key is having an identity. That's many people died because of that. This stage, dehumanization for all the genocide, whether it's the Holocaust and other genocide, you dehumanize a group of people, which means you justify to kill them. Tutsi were called inyenzi or cockroaches, were called inzoka or snakes, ibyiso or traitors, justifying them to be killed. And hate propaganda speeches were used. At that time, there was no social media, there was print media or radio. But radio, television, Libre de Mille Collines, RTRM, was the one spreading those hatred messages, say, kill the cockroaches, and this disease is not treated immediately, will kill you. So dehumanization invokes superiority and justify killing people. And this picture of President Kayibanda, the solution of Tutsi cockroaches is to kill them with the machetes. Again, this genocide, like others, were organized, planned, and unfortunately young people were trained and indoctrinated to go and kill Tutsi. And then plans were made in advance and the whole world was informed. And this was prepared by the elite in Viakazu for killing Tutsi. It was prepared because they bought machetes and camps were set up to train the militia how to terminate every Tutsi. For example, the Kankanombe. If you recall, so you have also to do some polarization. The 10 Commandments, Google it, the Hutu 10 Commandments, you're gonna see how extreme they are. And these were published again in 1994, but they started in 1959 with the Hutu Manifesto. They prepared to kill the Tutsi, and many Tutsi, they know where they live. They were killed by presidential guards. So they had a plan to kill all the Tutsi, and that started even before 1990. As soon as the war started, they started killing in Kibirira, Kinigi, Mutara, Nyamata, and Gashora, and Bugesera. So the last stage is extermination. If you go to Rwanda, I invite you to go visit all the memorial. You're going to see the signs of many people were killed in churches where they seek refuge. In Nyamata, Nharama, and Nyarubuye, and so forth. I'm going to talk about the last stage, and my colleague is going to elaborate more on that, which is denial and revisionism. We are in that stage now. For example, people refuse to call it genocide and use the terms such as a mass killing and war. If you were here in 1990, people didn't want to call it genocide. The perpetrators deny they committed the crime. They portray their murders as justified killing during war. They continue to hide where they buried the victims. And now you hear the double genocide and revisionism. They are now using social media, which is much easier on YouTube, to deny the genocide against the Tutsi or call it what is not, should be called. It's not Rwanda genocide. It's the genocide against the Tutsi. They continue to promote the same poisonous and ethnic ideology and that motivated their criminal act. And just look at what is happening in East DRC. Let me briefly also talk about the shameful failure of international community. I believe a genocide against the Tutsi could have been prevented. Why did the international community not intervene to stop the genocide? They were aware. US knew, Great Britain knew, of course France knew because it was involved helping the Habyarimana regime. UN was in Kigali, but they couldn't intervene and stop the genocide. So the world knew about what is happening in Rwanda, but refused to act or intervene, while Tutsi were left to defend themselves against impossible odds. Those who committed the genocide against the Tutsi now in Congo, doing the same what they did in Rwanda exactly, using the hatred ideology, committing genocide, killing. So they fled to DRC with the help of France, if you remember, through the Zone Turquoise, which was supposed to be humanitarian. Normally when someone seeks refuge with arms, you should disarm them and move them far from the border of Rwanda. But they have been attacking and shooting in Rwanda. So their goal hasn't changed, and they vowed to organize, attack Rwanda, and complete the genocide they started. They are spreading the same hatred ideologies that they used in Rwanda and are now targeting and killing Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese Tutsi. Many of them have seek refuge in Rwanda, Uganda, and other countries and are still there. Let me end here with, it's been 31 years after the genocide. Rwanda now is a beacon of hope, not just for Rwandans, but also for many Africans. So we gather today in every April up to July to remember, first and foremost, and to honor and celebrate the lives of loved ones who perished in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. We do also to support survivors. We need to support, like the testimony you just heard, and do everything to prevent that genocide doesn't happen again. United, we have to be united and promise a stronger society that emphasizes the social integration of all the people as it used to be. Ndi Umunyarwanda. When we need to rise above ethnic division and serve, protect, and distribute resources equally across the different social groups that compose our society. We need to build a prosper, cohesive, and secure society that is Rwanda. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaitsinga. I would like to take this moment to welcome our next speaker, Dr. Bujana Kulibali, who holds a PhD in African Studies from the University of Orleans Tours. Her research focuses on African history and political thought, conflict discourse analysis, and atrocity prevention. Dr. Kulibali has held teaching appointments at Harvard University, Rutgers University, Gaston Berger University, the University of Toulouse, and the University of Orleans. She's currently working on a book project on the mechanism of genocide ideology in North Kivu. Please welcome Dr. Kulibali.
Your Eminence Cardinal William Gregory, Honorable Charles Jeruka, distinguished faculty of the university, the Catholic University, and distinguished guests, survivors, families of lost loved ones, and friends of Rwanda. And to Dr. Kaitinga as well, thank you for introducing the topic, which I'm going to try to summarize a little bit from the perspective of discourse. What we call discourse is the way that language is linked to ideology. And an event such as a genocide is always linked to political ideology. so how we perceive the world. So as we've seen it just a few minutes ago, Africa was defined through the colonial lens. So this is how we've seen that discourse has shaped our reality. So there is, which is why I'd like to, when I speak about DRC, is I'd like to really remind that there's a common pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial history of Rwanda, Burundi, and Congo, or what we call today Congo, Burundi, and Rwanda, or Congo for DRC. Which means that the borders, as we've seen it, are really very, I would say, not specifically rigid, also because a lot of the people in that region of the Great Lakes are family members of people across the border. Family members, but also because of the genocide against the Tutsi, a lot of them were either born in one country, but their parents come from another. So it's important to understand how this entire region could almost be defined as one country from our perspective today. So just quickly, it's important to talk about the colonial legacy. I'm not going to go too much into the history. I'm just going to summarize this notion of us versus them and what it is leading to today. So it is linked on colonial racism. When we talk about racism, we tend to imagine, I guess, anti-black racism, but in this case, it's black on black racism, which has its roots in the anti-black racism. So the Hamitic myth, of course, is a legend that defined what came to be known, the Tutsi, as coming from somewhere in the north, Egypt, Ethiopia, or the Middle East. Again, it's not science, but it allowed the colonizers to do the project, which was colonization, and to be able to administer power in that region. So this is where ethnicity was manipulated. Again, we talk about ethnicity when we talk about Africa. We tend to not use ethnicity for the Belgians, for example, who have the different, I would say, languages used. So this is where the division between what came to be called Bantu versus Nilotic came. Again, Bantu is a misnomer because what we call Bantu is all the people who speak the Bantu languages, and that's almost the entire East Africa and Central Africa. So Kinyarwanda is a Bantu language, Swahili is a Bantu language, etc. So this division became also this dichotomy between what we used to call, or what they would call, true blacks versus false blacks, because features were different, and because they were using these anthropomorphic measurements to define categories of people. This is how the identity cards came to be. And so the racial hierarchies were dividing basically social categories, originally social categories. And this is where these definitive racial designations came to be. So I'm not going to go back too much to the drawing of the borders that we've just seen, but Congo, as you can see on the map, is one of the largest countries in Africa. Just imagine that from Kinshasa to the east of DRC, it's like from Paris to Moscow. So it's 3,000 kilometers, maybe 1,600 miles. So Congo is rich in minerals. I think everybody knows it by now. So Belgians were very interested in that region, and because Belgium was a very small country, they ended up exploiting Congo a lot and used the divide and rule philosophy. So I want to focus on this notion that history versus myth, so history is different from myth. although, again, what we call history in the West tends to be maybe myth that we turn into history, which is why language becomes extremely important. This is where Africa was invented from the perspective of the European. So the us versus them, or the fact that we were defining ourselves from othering the other group. So I'm going to go into quickly into denial. So I'm not disagreeing with Dr. Stanton that denial is the last stage, but denial is actually even prior to genocide. So denial is something that accompanies genocide before, during, and after. It starts with denying that the person has a right to existence, and this is what happened with, in general, these African people. The Europeans were considering them as less than human beings. So on the scale of race, they were at the bottom of the hierarchy, right there close to the chimpanzee. So the denial is also, it goes through the process of repressing resistance. So anybody who resists, we're going to repress that. And then on the other end, you will have those who will have to internalize that form of racism or accept that they maybe are inferior human beings. In any case, it's a process of trauma that manifests itself after this repression of resistance. And this is how genocide ideology is born. So it's language of violence that becomes an ideology of violence which turns into physical violence, which is what came to be the genocide against the Tutsi. But I do want to go back a little bit, to go back to the idea of denial. So denial happens at all stages of genocide, before, during, and after. One example is in 1964, the word genocide was mentioned many times, but nothing was done to prevent then, and nothing was done as it culminated into 1994. So for example, La Libre Belgique on January 13th, 1964, wrote that 10,000 men, women, and children have already been slaughtered, and the international community is remaining silent and refusing to stop this genocide. Pourquoi pas on February 7th, 1964, the title was, Are We, so Belgium, an accomplice in the ongoing crime of genocide in Rwanda? The Times of England on January 24th, 29th, in February 3rd, 1964, ongoing massacres in Rwanda have reached genocidal levels. And again, Le Monde on January 17th, 1964, Témoignages chrétiens on February 6, 1964, etc., all confirm that what was happening then was a genocide. So although we do acknowledge that in 1994, the genocide against the Tutsi took place, it's important to understand that this genocide is almost 100 years old. Some of the examples of how genocide denial was taking place during the genocide itself. So, for example, we have Jean Carbonat, who is the president of Survie at that time, but who was also working with FIDH. On France 2 in 1993, warns about a systematic planification of large-scale massacres. He even cries on TV at that point, but nothing is happening. We have what we call the genocide facts of Roméo Dallaire in January 1994. So that's before April, where he is warning about planned genocide coming up, planned massacres. The Clinton administration refusing to call it genocide on April 28th and May 4th, 1994, to avoid having to do something about it, to intervene. And then this is before genocide, or before 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Again, there are many examples of how the perpetrators themselves were using denial in order to be able to go ahead with their project of extermination. But this is where the final stage of genocide that Dr. Stanton talks about in the 10 stages of genocide. The reason why the perpetrators are going to deny genocide is because they're trying to flee justice. So it is, at this point in time, it's not so much about ideology, it's more about saving themselves from being held accountable for their crimes. And I will join Gustave in this case, is these perpetrators are still running around the world free. And a lot of these perpetrators are only being put on trial today when they are reaching the ends of their lives. So after that, we have also the diaspora. There are a lot of people that are missing here, but I'm just putting a few. We have the children of genocide perpetrators and those who support them, who have a large network in Belgium, but also in other countries in Europe. We have people like Victorine Gabiré, whose mother was a genocide perpetrator and who has openly denied genocide, which is why she was convicted in Rwanda, but she's currently, she was amnestied, or she's serving her sentence, not in prison in any case. And then we have a number of other people that call themselves either journalists or academics, but who are explicitly deniers. Again, denial, it's not just to say there was no genocide in 1994. As a matter of fact, even those who used to deny it before are saying now that there is a genocide, but they're saying that there is another genocide that was committed. Once we double the genocide, there's no genocide. It's like saying that two groups are committing massacres or killing each other almost for a sport. So it is a genocide denial when we say that there was another genocide that was committed by RPF. There are many journalists who started to base that theory on rumors that were taking place in 1994 about RPF committing massacres, or in any case targeted massacres against Hutu. So we have here Philippe Rentiens, who is considered as one of the experts on the Great Lakes, published by my own university, which is Cambridge University Press. He just published a book actually on saying that First and Second Republic were not as bad for the Tutsi. And yet he is the one who drafted the Constitution of the Second Republic in 1978, in which there was systematic structural exclusion from all institutions in public life of Tutsi. So he was the advisor to Habyarimana. Then we have Judy River in the middle. She's Canadian, and it's a folklore of genocide denial with her. We have next to her Stephen Smith, who is one of the first ones who started to, so on her right, who started to talk about double genocide. He has one of his newspaper articles, I think in Le Monde or Libération, where he's talking about double genocide. And then we have Michaela Rong, bottom left, who is publishing very often in Foreign Policy and other prestigious newspapers, and who also is focused solely on what she calls the massacres of RPF. It's important to understand that she's also often called to testify for genocide perpetrators in European courts. And again, they will always say that they are not genocide deniers because they're not denying genocide, but often what they do is that they're trying to convey that Africa is a place of chaos. And therefore, what basically Stephen Smith in his book, Negrology, called African eating themselves. We have Rudasingwa at the bottom, and then I forgot his name, Howard Lynch. At the bottom, they're also very often together. They do conferences, and there are many more, of course. Charles Nana, who was convicted in December 2024 for genocide denial of the genocide against the Tutsi in Paris, in a French court. And then we have academics that follow the tradition of Frentien, such as Jason Stearns, who is mainly an expert on the Great Lakes. So I'm going to go quickly here to talk about how denial of genocide is, like I said earlier, is the denial of the right to existence. So it starts with the notion of dehumanization. So it's this perpetuation of the colonial belief in the insignificance of the African life. So that's basically what genocide denial is. So forms of genocide denial, like we've said, there's double genocide, but there's also the accusation in a mirror. It's when you accuse the other of being the source of a future extermination. So we were talking about Leon Mugesera earlier in that one of his famous speeches that he gave in Kabaya in 1992. So he says, why don't we seize those parents who send their children and exterminate them? Why don't we seize all those who bring them and exterminate them all? Are we really waiting now for them to come and exterminate us? This is a very common idea that we find as well today in DRC, is that people are accusing M23 to be the reason why there is hatred against Tutsi, because they're saying that before M23 was there was no persecution of Congolese Tutsi, which, again, we know is not true. And then I will not repeat the one that was used earlier about the idea of the foreign origin. This is actually extremely important. So without reading the passage, what's important is that today M23 are defined as being foreigners, and this notion of the Tutsi foreigner, Tutsi invader, is really the main trope that is being used, including by the international community. I'm just going to quickly go into, to go a little quicker, but also talk about dangerous speech. Often in the US we say that hate speech is freedom of speech, but dangerous speech is not. So there's a project that was done by Suzanne Benesch, who actually created this project about explaining what dangerous speech is. So dangerous speech, in this case, specific case of the Great Lakes region, is often dangerous speech. So dangerous speech is any form of expression, including speech, text, or images, that can increase the risk that its audience will condone or participate in violence against members of another group. And so at the bottom there, one familiar example of them is dehumanization, in which people are often described as insects, vermin, bacteria, or cancer. And this is not just for the genocide against the Tutsi, it's happening quite often when in these contexts of projects of extermination. So this can make violence seem acceptable. If people seem like cockroaches or infectious germs, it's fine to get rid of them. So this is why ideology is really a prior stage to genocide. Another hallmark is to tell people that they face a mortal threat from a disfavored or minority group, which makes violence seem not just acceptable, but necessary. So this hallmark has been dubbed accusation in a mirror, because it asserts that violence would come from the opposite side, from those who are actually the would-be victims of violence. So again, very common occurrence today. I'm going to talk a little bit about DRC. I'll try to go quickly in a few minutes, but what is happening now in DRC is what really is important to understand is it's not just now. The genocide perpetrators fled into DRC or into former Zaire, so into Congo, after they perpetrated the genocide against the Tutsi. So everybody must understand that it takes 2 million people to kill 1 million people. So we're talking about 1,500,000 people fleeing into Congo. And not all of them came back, not all of them have been caught. So a lot of them fled into Congo and have lived there under safe haven for 30 years. They continued to perpetrate genocide over there. They continued to perpetrate genocide in Burundi. In 2004, Gatumba massacre, during the Gatumba massacre, they killed about over 160 refugees who fled into Burundi. And these were the Banyamulenge, so from South Kivu, Congolese Tutsi from South Kivu. And then many times the camps in Rwanda were attacked, where Congolese Tutsi fled into Rwanda for the past 30 years. So the genocide perpetrators would come into Rwanda and would attack these camps and kill people. Many of the people that I met over there, that I interviewed in Masisi, Ruchuru, have fled many times. We're talking about sometimes 4 or 5 times they went into exile. So there are children born in camps. And sometimes it gets almost confusing. We have to ask them which exile. So this is a life of exile. So just wanted to quickly talk about the colonial paradigm. What happens with the international community is, I don't want to say anymore that it's shameful that they have not done anything. The problem with the international community, with us in the West, is that we put our interests first, and then we watch these things happening. So we actually, when we go to Goma, maybe it's a little better now, but in February when I was there, it's this kind of spectacle that we see. It's this form of contemplation of African misery and death. On the left, we have Red Cross burying people in broad daylight in the middle of the city, right across from MONUSCO. And I don't understand why it's not being done somewhere else. But there's this idea that we need to actually watch it happening. The Mugunga camp, I have a video after that, but I won't have time to show it. But it's a famous camp that has been open for the past 30 years. So we cannot understand that the international community cannot solve this problem. If M23 are solving it, if M23 are closing this camp, why can't we for 30 years? And Goma is MONUSCO capital. Everything is stamped MONUSCO in that city. So with $40 billion that was spent on MONUSCO in the past 25 years, we could not take care of these camps. You can see US aid on these tents. And then we have MSF also still working. And then Munzenze prison, which is really a tragic story, is that it's a prison, but it's funded by the Red Cross, MONUSCO, etc. So I'm just going to pass this one. That was the video, but that's the Mugunga camp. You can see how it looks. This country that is so rich, but yet we are still at this stage of people living like this for 30 years. Munzenze prison, you can see on the left over there, it's a preschool inside a prison of children that are 3 years old, actually newborn, to 12 years old, etc. And then when you look at what's written on the blackboard, it says the topic of the day was summer vacations. So these are children who are in prison, born in prison, and who are going to school, funded by MONUSCO. And then they are intervening in a conflict that they are condoning. So we have the UN peacekeepers, we have some DRC peacekeepers, then at the bottom we have the CCCO, which is the Joint Coordination Center. And what I'm basically trying to say is that these people who are here are resisting the situation that they have been experiencing for 30 years. Often people think that M23 are Congolese Tutsi. Well, Bertrand Bisimwa is not Congolese Tutsi. He's not a Tutsi from Congo. He's from Congo, but he's not a Tutsi. Someone like Lawrence Kanyuka, who is the spokesperson of the movement, is not neither. They're not, I would say it's less than half of the people who are part of the M23 who are Tutsi, which is why it's important to understand that this whole notion of the myth of invasion is not to be believed. What I wanted to show with these pictures is how people live with them. The picture on the right, the black and white picture here, we were driving on the road and someone had mattresses piled up on their motorbike and they fell, and the M23 escorts just jumped in a second, lift him up, and came back on the truck. What we see at the bottom, the M23 soldier who is milking the cow. We are in Masisi, and this is where he grew up. And the first thing he thinks about, he gives his gun to his fellow soldiers, and he runs to milk a cow. And you can see how comfortable they feel in this environment. Which is why they're also winning the war. But we can't call them Rwandans because Rwanda is extremely developed compared to Congo. So it would not make sense to want to go to Congo when Rwanda is next door and there's everything there. There's a future for them. It's because this is really their home. It's home calling. I think what is difficult for everybody, the international community and so on, is that M23 are also a new type of African or a new type of Congolese, Rwandan, etc. So you remember that Belgium colonized or had these countries, Rwanda, Congo, and Burundi as territories or as colonies, and Rwanda and the M23 as a movement are the only ones that are being sanctioned today, which must tell us that they're doing something that is angering everybody else. This is an example of Umuganda in Ruchuru. This was before Goma was taken. So we see the president of the M23 planting trees. So the idea of Umuganda is to have a community gather and clean the streets, plant trees, and so on. So Salongo is the name that they use in Congo, Umuganda in Rwanda. I'm going to try to go quickly. What I wanted to show you is an example of how genocide ideology is playing. This is a village that is in Masisi that was completely burned to ashes. And this was very recent, October 2023. Who did this is a coalition of Congolese National Army with the FDLR, which are the genocide perpetrators that fled from Rwanda into Congo. And in addition to that, the Eastern African Community contingent of Burundi. So Burundi is joining into this. And this was when M23 left that area. So M23 was asked to withdraw, and as soon as they withdrew, this is what happened. So you can see a family at the bottom. This gentleman gave us an interview where he's explaining how he had to flee with his children on his back, and they lost everything. So the houses you see on the right is after they got rebuilt recently. And what we see at the bottom is the Burundian trenches. This is Petit Masisi, which is nearby. That's where they were basically communicating with the FDLR, so the genocide perpetrators of the genocide against the Tutsi, etc. And in a way, we're lucky because the perpetrators of this actually filmed themselves doing it. Because sometimes it's really hard to have these images, but we have images of this happening. Buiza is a camp, refugee camps, where all of these people who got attacked in Turo and elsewhere fled into. They were attacked by a coalition of Congolese, MONUSCO, so Burundi, and other armed groups in this camp where you see there are 67% of children. And they were saying that it's an M23 position. They fought the entire night, and M23, this was the time that they withdrew. They had to actually walk on foot to get and rescue these people. This is today, or about a year after. So that was in November 2023 that the coalition, again, MONUSCO participating, MONUSCO being the peacekeeping mission of the UN. I'm sorry for the time. Sorry, I'm going to go back to this. So when Goma fell in the hands of M23, we went to Goma with some research colleagues, and we found this. So this is in the airport of Goma, and we found this CCCO, which is the Joint Command Office or Center, where MONUSCO was coordinating attacks across North Kivu. So you can see North and South Kivu. The maps at the bottom is what we found on the walls. So you can see where all the armed groups are. So when they say that there's no FDLR, no genocide perpetrators, they're actually showing where they are and the positions that they have that are huge in the area. And then the map next to it, it's the position of MONUSCO, but there's also the position of FRDC, which is the Congolese army. So they were all jointly working with these armed groups against M23 and against the Congolese Tutsi. What you see in the bottom is an attendance sheet that we found in the airport that showed that the FRDC general or colonel that is at the top was having meetings with the mercenaries. So Lutando is one of the leadership members of Agamera, which is a mercenary company. And then at the bottom you have MONUSCO too. So we have everybody in coalition working together with genocide perpetrators. The blue notebooks here are logs where we can find every day what was happening. And basically all we see is that M23, all they do is defending themselves. The SADC, or semi-DRC forces, we have South Africa, Tanzania, and Malawi, decided to join Congo to fight with them against M23. And you can see the white flags, so they surrendered eventually, and they're leaving now. I'm almost done quickly. What the problem is today is that we have the DRC government has adopted genocide ideology. So this is the same case scenario as we had in Rwanda. Even if we have a hard time accepting it, for some reason we easily accept that RTLM was spreading hate ideology, but this is actually Congolese government officials all the way to the president spreading hate ideology. So again, these are all videos if anybody's interested, but we have, in the middle we have Patrick Mouyaya, who are using all these theories about invasion and so on. We have Tshisekedi, the president on the right, who is saying that Kagame is going to die like Hitler, I guess, that's what he says, but again, he's calling him Hitler. At the bottom, we have the Minister of Justice, who was at that prison that I was showing earlier that completely burned, where he's talking about the traitors, the Ibizo that my colleague talked about earlier. So the notion of traitor is being Tutsi. We have Denis Mukwege, who is known for being a Nobel Peace Prize, who himself is perpetrating this, or perpetuating and perpetrating this notion of Tutsi being the invader and someone that needs to be kicked out of Congo. And then we have Mouyaya again, the spokesperson or the Minister of Communications, who is talking about the Rwandan poison. So he's assimilating every single Rwandan to poison, which is again the same as calling them snakes. And we have Justin Bitaguera, who is an MP, who is also doing the same thing, calling Tutsi born criminals and calling them snakes.
Parce que tant qu'il n'y aura pas ceux qui sont en train de penser Empire, Yima et consorts, le Rwanda va toujours faire comme l'avait dit en son temps le professeur
stratégie économique, parce que le fond de la guerre menée par le Rwanda est économique. Il faut continuer le processus de pillage en RDC. Il y a une
politique et économique.
I think if I just switch to the next
Je vais
one.
m'adresser au président rwandais Paul
Like for
Kagame.
each video. Okay, we're good. Thank you. What the first one said is interesting because he talked about the Hima Tutsi Empire. So there's this notion that Rwanda is trying to become an empire, as if it wasn't a kingdom before that was cut into pieces. But still, Rwanda is not looking to go into Congo and occupy any territory. This is a territory where Congolese Tutsi live. The notion of stealing minerals, I just want to remind that Kinshasa, which is the ones who are accusing Rwanda of stealing minerals, own 87% of the mineral wealth in Congo. So when we talk about the Rwanda being an invader, it does not make much sense. The territory that is occupied right now, 15% by M23, it doesn't mean that they're actually mining. So imagine a soldier who suddenly becomes an expert in mining. It's really unimaginable. And these are the roads that take to the mine in Rubaya that is accusing Rwanda of stealing minerals. It's a road that it takes about 5 hours to make 100 kilometers or 70 miles. So it's really difficult. Again, 1 kilogram of coltan is only $35. So this is an artisanal mine that does not produce, it is not the capital of ingredients that we put in our phones to begin with. So I guess, there's not enough time, but I think one thing to understand is that how do we break this cycle or this paradigm, which is a paradigm where for 100 years or close to 100 years, a certain group of people has been targeted. When solutions are being found by Rwanda, which after the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda was able to develop and provide a normal life to their people. We see now how M23, who has been asking for dialogue, and that dialogue has been refused. Now Kinshasa is going to Doha to talk to M23. We see M23 having their own police officers in Goma, because again, the international community wants to believe that Africans cannot have their own system of security and development. We also have the EAC that had these Burundian soldiers taking part in the genocide ideology with the SADC, which is the semi-DRC forces that were raising the white flag, who are now trying to work together. So I think that the one asset that is extremely important is peace. We cannot do business and continue to do, I guess, to have an equal partnership with our partners in Africa if we are thinking about how we want to perpetuate neocolonialism or colonialism on the continent. And thank you. I took too much time, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Coulibaly. As we near the end of our program, and as I call forward Ms. Kathy Rwivanga to share with us her remarks as on behalf of the Rwandan community in the DMV, I would like to remind everyone who has a program to look at the back page of it. We have a QR code on this program, and the reason this is here is that as much as commemoration is about memory and honoring those we lost, it's also about education and making sure that we have the information and the resources we need to be able to stand against this wave of genocide denial. So the QR code takes you to the virtual tours of the Kigali Genocide Memorial, and this allows you to be able to learn more about this and find more resources you might need to understand the history we're discussing today. Thank you.
Your Eminence, Cardinal Wilton Gregory, Honorable Charles Najeruka, representative of the Embassy of the Republic of Rwanda, Dr. Dulia Demelo, representing the President of the Catholic University of America, distinguished experts, Dr. Kaitsinga and Dr. Bojana, Reverend Jonathan Weaver, Representative President of Kwibuka DMV, Emmanuel Ndehimana, our survivor, Gustav, distinguished guests, fellow Rwandans, friends of Rwanda, good afternoon. I stand before you today on behalf of the Rwandan community in the DMV. To Catholic University, thank you so much for hosting us a second time and for your continued partnership with Rwandans, both here and home. Fellow Rwandans, this event is possible because of you and your continued support to remembering and honoring our loved ones. Thank you for always showing up. Thank you for choosing to remember. Thank you for standing with the survivors and standing with Rwanda not just today, but always. We gather each year because while survivors were rescued from the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, they still carry the scars. Scars that echo the pain of generations before them. And when we say never again, when we commit to fighting genocide denial and distortion, we do so that our children will never have to carry those same scars or burdens. Survivors do not get to 1 year, 10 years, or 31 years by walking alone. Survival has always been a collective journey, a testimony to the power of community, of shared humanity, of people choosing to walk alongside each other. We are in so many ways like passengers on a great liner, freshly rescued from shipwreck. In those moments of survival, joy and solidarity transcends all barriers. From the steerage of the captain's table, there is no them or us, there is only we, Rwandans. Sorry. That is what these 100 days of Kwibuka ask of us. To pause, to remember, to stand together. But long after these days are over, our lifelong responsibility remains to confront and challenge genocide denial wherever it appears, to protect the truth and to preserve the memory. As the Rwandan community in the DMV, we're deeply grateful for your presence, for your solidarity, and for your unwavering commitment to truth, to justice, and to unity. Together, we remember, together we heal, together we build. Turibuka, Twiyubaka. We remember, we rebuild. It is also my honor to welcome Honorable Charles Nhageruka to give us his remarks. Murakoze cyane.
Thank you. His Eminence Cardinal Wilson Gregor, who has left just now. Dear the representative of Catholic University, Dr. Julia Demol, she has left also. I think we have Professor Robert, yeah? Dear leaders, dear the presence of Kwibuka and members of Kwibuka Association, dear survivors, friends of Rwanda who came to join us today, our fellow compatriots, all protocol observed, good afternoon, muraho kandi. First, I'm grateful to address the sympathetic message of comfort for Kwibuka 31st with warm greetings from Her Excellency Ambassador Mathilde, who would wish to be with us today, of course, at this critical moment. Above and beyond, our gratitude goes more deeply to our presenters, Dr. Bojana, Dr. Jean Kaisinga, our friend Gustave Mukuriarinda, who took us through his testimony, the strong message of what he went through during the genocide against the Tutsi, and how he came up to survive psychologically and physically. Thank you for the strong message.
Again, as we know, within 100 days from April 7th to July 3rd, more than 1 million Tutsi were totally killed and burnt alive, slaughtered, humiliated, and raped. And some of them were contaminated with HIV, while others were tortured across the country. Their belongings were looted, their houses were burned and destroyed completely. And the country started from the scratch after 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. It is the time to reflect and pay tribute to the victim of 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, which claimed over 1 million lives of Tutsi. In the span of 100 days, we lost our lives, our people, our Tutsi, more than 1 million. If you do just a simple calculation, in one day, 10,000 Tutsi were killed. In 1 hour, it's around 600 and 800 people. In 60 seconds, it's 8 to 10 Tutsi. It's so sad. It's time to reflect on memories of our loved one, and this is why we need to remember. It's very crucial and imperative. I appreciate this opportunity as we gather here at Catholic University of America to reflect on the root cause of the 1994 genocide, which originated from colonialism that imposed ethnic divisions, leading to the preparations and execution of the genocide against the Tutsi, and observed by international community. Of course, the prior presenters went through the whole history and narrative, but I want to go, I will present not in an academic way, just in a diplomatic view. The genocide against the Tutsi began in 1916, when Belgium, Germany, and the United Kingdom redefined Rwanda's borders or boundaries. Repressive laws were established, such as corporal punishment, and Congolese law institutionalized injustice and divisions among Rwandans. Belgium signed agreement with the League of Nations and the United Nations to Rwanda towards political autonomy and economic, social, and educational development, but these commitments were never upheld. Belgium initiated a social revolution led by Belgians, leading to the exile of King Musinga to Congo, and he ended up dying from there. And he was replaced immediately by King Mutara Rudahigwa. In return, colonial authorities granted King Rudahigwa a greater medal of freedom, allowing him to challenge injustice and advocate for independence. A few years later, this King Rudahigwa was poisoned and died in 1959 with the complicity of Belgians. Belgium later created the political party called Parmehutu, which claimed Rwanda belonging exclusively to Hutu and that the elimination of Tutsi was government policy. There is one chronologist, Belgium, ordered the forced deportation of Tutsi to specific areas, particularly Bugesera, and displaced 14,000 Tutsi. I think Gustav mentioned it in his presentation. The political party, another political party, UNAL,
which advocated for independence, was falsely portrayed as Tutsi only, communist, and anti-Catholic group. Belgium passed an amnesty law in 1961 and failed releasing 2,000 individuals involved in the massacres and the killing of Tutsi between 1959 and 1961. Also, the National Army was composed exclusively of Hutu, with the Belgian intelligence service expressing concern about the recruitment policies, the recruitment process, and the selection and screening. In 1962, the Rwandan army launched a wave of massacres, killing over 2,000 Tutsi, including one known person who was a nurse called Clever Ndejuru by that time. In December 1963, the Rwandan army committed mass killings again, claiming the lives of over 35,000 of Tutsi. Belgium ambassadors warned a mass destruction of Tutsi, and Belgium issued instructions to Belgian diplomats and nationals of Belgium in Rwanda regarding how to respond to the extermination of Tutsi. Since these massacres are attracting international attention, Belgium must avoid being accused of complicity in this genocide. In 1962, Belgium granted Rwanda nominal independence, leading to a constitution exclusively reserved for the Hutu. This led to discriminatory law excluding Tutsi from education and employment in public service. In 1978, Habyarimana, who was the former president, adopted a new constitution that reinforced the policy of excluding Tutsi from Rwanda. In 1982, Uganda expelled Rwandan refugees who were, in return, rejected by the government of Rwanda, and Belgium aimed to avoid accusation of complicity at all. This injustice led to the formation of Rwanda Patriotic Front, RPF Inkotanyi, and the National Liberation Struggle. Belgium and France and Congo sent troops right away to fight against the RPF, with France supporting Habyarimana militarily and Belgium providing political backing. The Habyarimana regime kept criticizing the RPF, calling them blood drunkards, enemies of the nation, cockroaches, and other type of dehumanization. Some Belgian and French officials refused to acknowledge the RPF fighters as Rwandans. In 1993, the guy called André Louis, the Secretary General of the main Belgian political party, publicly expressed support for Léon Mugesera. You have heard him in his speech inciting the extermination of the Tutsi. In 1994, even before that, the last queen of Rwanda, Gicanda Rosalie, was killed 2 weeks after the starting of the genocide, after being deported from Belgium, and when she was in Belgium for medical treatment. And then in 1994, after 1994, Belgian parliamentarians traveled to North Kivu and South Kivu, advised the formation of a government and political party in DRC in favor of defeated government of Rwanda to form this militia group. It is in this context that the FDLR emerged, a militia group, which continued to commit genocide genocidal crimes in the region and conspiracy with the Congolese government and the army. The United Nations has adopted over 40 resolutions demanding the dismantling of FDLR since 2000, but MONUSCO has never fulfilled its mandate. The same, the European Union and African Union also issued resolution calling for the elimination of FDLR. Until today, no execution measures has been taken. Belgium has remained the only European country where genocidal denial against the Tutsi has been practiced with impunity since July 1994, though we know the genocide hold the same legal status. Today, the bond that unites Rwanda is blessed. And those who undermine the rights should understand this and let them go. And let them be. It's a great time to reflect on our history and pay particular attention to mistakes made, to that the country and the world can draw lesson, and to prevent the repetition of genocide. In our heart, it will never happen again. We should also fight for legal criminalization of those who continue to spread false narrative and animosity. We will continue to remember, educate ourselves about our history, fight the genocide ideology, and sustain the progress made. It's time to encourage, restore, and rebuild our units by accepting lessons with power from those who stopped the genocide. Let's salute the Rwandan Patriotic Front, led by President Paul Kagame, that successfully stopped the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Allow me, before I close, to quote the powerful message of His Excellency President Paul Kagame of April 7th this week. To those responsible for Rwanda's dark past and the cruel present, he said, "We will never allow genocide to happen again. Not because external actors have stopped trying, but because Rwandans themselves will never allow it." His Excellency President Paul Kagame criticized Belgium's colonial influence and the international community's inaction during the genocide in Rwanda, highlighting the intertwined nature of the country's past and current challenges, and said Rwandans should stand firm and fight for what is right, rather than succumb to the pressure or manipulation. That's his end of quotation. Let's say never again from one generation to the generations. Once again, I thank you to the organizers of this event for their effort, for their tireless effort by also the collaboration with the Catholic University of America, and more importantly, the strong collaboration with the government of Rwanda. We do value your support. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you all. This marks the end of our program today. As we conclude and we close, I would like us to keep in mind and reflect on the words of Her Excellency Janet Kagame, First Lady of Rwanda, who said, "Never again" is not a prayer, it's a promise. We need to make sure that as we reflect, as we remember, we keep the promise of never again for ourselves and for generations to come, but not just for Rwanda's history, but also for the world. Because as a young Rwandan in today's world, I am oftentimes frightened by the rhetorics and the words that I hear people using in different places, left and right, this country included at times, when we are talking about the other, the us versus them. And anytime that rhetoric comes up, Rwanda is a testament to the fact that those words do have weight and actually matter. And I think, like we were taught today, it is important for us to understand the difference between free speech and dangerous speech, and make sure that we use every avenue that we have to uphold the truth and to keep the memory of those we lost with us wherever we are. So I thank you all for this time, for being with us, for being patient. I know it was a long program. I welcome you all to join us for refreshment as we close. And for those who are interested in the book we mentioned, Gustave's memoir, he'll have it with him at the exit. And if you're interested in getting a copy, please talk to him or talk to the team that's at the sign-in desk. I thank you all. Have a good evening.